Welcome, age of vintage society. The enmity between Davis and Crawford created one of the most famous celebrity feuds of all time. Details about the notorious feud between Bette Davis and Joan Crawford have filled countless newspaper columns, books and now our video highlighting the tension between the two. Why did Bette Davis and Joan Crawford hate each other? Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. The epic Hollywood rivalry, Bette Davis and Joan Crawford. The ugly truth about Joan Crawford and Bette Davis. Why did they hate each other so much? Well, it's a long story. One of the most infamous feuds in movie history was that of Bette Davis and Joan Crawford. The rivalry between silver screen icons Bette Davis and Joan Crawford is the stuff of legend, a decades-long battle sparked by both professional and personal resentments and fueled by an industry that loved nothing more than to see its women tear each other apart. The lifelong hatred began back in 1935 when Davis was shooting the film Dangerous and fell in love with her co-star Franchot Tone. Crawford had been aware of Davis's feelings and ended up seducing and marrying Tone. Bette had been jealous of Crawford's affair with Clark Gable, on whom she had a crush, but it was Franchot Tone who the two really fell out over. Tone, who was dating Crawford, was Davis's leading man in Dangerous. Davis fell in love with him, but he married Crawford. Crawford was already a big star when Davis was making her first appearances in movies. Joan had slept her way to the top and gone as far as marrying the legendary Douglas Fairbanks Jr. Davis was irritated by the way that the newspapers seemed so obsessed with Crawford's love life, and she was especially put out the time that the studio had arranged a big publicity stunt for Davis's new movie Ex-Lady, only for Crawford to steal their headlines by announcing on the same day that she and Fairbanks were divorcing. Their rivalry reached new heights when they were filming Baby Jane, when the actresses purposely tried to sabotage one another. It was reported that Crawford filled her pockets with rocks in one scene in hopes that Davis would hurt her back when dragging her. In a game of tit for tat, Davis then got her revenge when she kicked the other actress hard in the head and not in the stomach like the scene called for. Couple these incidents with Crawford's mocking of the dress Davis wore to the 1936 Academy Awards and the olive branches she sent in the form of flowers and gifts, which Davis made sure to return, and you've got the perfect recipe for a cinematic feud like no other. Crawford moved to Warner Brothers. In 1943, also known as Davis's territory, she had been signed to the studio since 1932 and would remain there until 1949. With both leading ladies in Warner Brothers' pocket, they began picking from the same roles. Though the feud came to a head whilst on the set of the 5-time Academy Award-nominated horror film Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, it was no secret to the rumour mill that Crawford and Davis were far from fond of each other. Davis ultimately received an Oscar nomination for her role, causing a jealous Crawford to call up the other nominees and ask if she could accept the award on their behalf. The contention is said to have started when Davis hit a career milestone in 1933. Her film Ex-Lady was going to be the first of Davis's films on which her name would rest atop the title. A noticeable sign of the tension between the two were the barbed comments they made in the press about each other. For Davis, Crawford was a mannequin, one of the lowest remarks an actress can get in Hollywood. Plus, she said that Joan's eyebrows were like African caterpillars. Crawford was no better, saying that, "Poor Bette, looked as if there was no happy day or night in her life. It was Crawford who persuaded Davis to sign on to Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, the psychological horror story about a crippled former actress, Crawford, who is terrorised by her deranged sister, Davis, in their Hollywood home. Though the film was an unexpected box office success and did to some extent represent the comeback that both actresses desperately needed, it became remembered most powerfully as a public document of their real-life rivalry. In the beginning, the two icons were polite in public. However, war was inevitable on the film set, where things would become inflamed. In the scene where Jane beats Blanche, Crawford worried whether Davis might actually really hurt her, so she proposed using a stunt double for the scene. However, a stunt actress was not used. As it was filmed, Davis supposedly clipped Crawford's head, and her screams caused the filming of the scene to stop. An unapologetic Davis was heard to mutter, "I barely touched her." According to some, Bette allegedly left Crawford seriously injured and in need of stitches, but who knows what really happened. But let's stop for a minute and think about it. How could two of Hollywood's most successful women go so far in rivalry? Can you imagine hating someone so much? Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. And now back. Fast forward to a couple of days later, when the moment of Crawford's revenge approached. It was the scene in which Jane drags Blanche out of the bed and across the room. Crawford, perfectly aware of the fact that Davis suffered back pain, purposely made herself as heavy as possible. According to the film's director, Robert Aldrich, Crawford wanted Bette to suffer, and some say she secretly wore a special lead weightlifter's belt to ensure maximum agony. From what we know, Crawford spoiled at least one take of the intricate scene by stopping amid filming in order to cough. Once the scene was done, Davis wept in pain. The conclusion of filming the entire sequence of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane took place at the Academy Awards ceremony. It was Bette Davis who got a nomination for Best Actress in the movie, and she was favoured to win. But you would be mistaken if you thought that Crawford had not orchestrated a plan to steal the spotlight. As the winner was announced, Davis must have been disappointed enough to hear that it was not her name being read, but Anne Bancroft's for her role in The Miracle Worker. Much more shocking was Crawford dramatically passing by Davis and saying, "Excuse me, I have an Oscar to collect." Little did poor Bette realise Crawford outsmarted her. First, she had been campaigning against Davis for claiming the award. Second, Crawford had also arranged with some of the other nominated actresses, who would be not attending the ceremony, that she should receive the award on their behalf. She claimed the award in the name of Bancroft and left Davis to fume out of the spotlight. Several years later, the two would meet again, this time to co-star in another horror film, Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte. But at this point, Davis was unable to seek her revenge on her adversary, as Crawford was quickly out of the movie due to illness. Rumour has it, though, that Davis made it as unpleasant for her as possible. What really triggered perhaps the greatest of all catfights in Hollywood? The rumour. Bette thinks Joan is in love with her, and might be right. Given the comparisons, it's no surprise that some producers were keen to get Davis and Crawford on screen together. The women in prison drama Caged was intended by Warner Brothers as a joint Davis-Crawford vehicle, but Davis supposedly refused to sign on opposite Crawford, calling the film a dyke movie, which leads into another intriguing wrinkle of this feud. Crawford, who had relationships with both men and women throughout her life, was suspected by some to have harboured a sexual curiosity about Davis. Francho isn't interested in Bette, but I wouldn't mind giving her a poke if I was in the right mood, Crawford is quoted as saying by her friend and confidant, Jerry Asher. "Wouldn't that be funny?" Asher adds that he was never sure whether Crawford was serious, but felt that she was, attracted to Betty's vitality and energy. Betty was always convinced, due to her ego, that Joan had the hots for her, and that's one reason why she was always so antagonistic and called her a phony. Betty gets snarky after Joan's death. Following Crawford's death in May, Davis is often quoted as having said the following: "You should never say bad things about the dead, you should only say good. Joan Crawford is dead. Good. But it's almost impossible to find an actual source for this infamous sick burn, so take it with a pinch of salt." They had at least one unfortunate thing in common. Joan and Betty actually had a lot in common, including ungrateful daughters. Both of the actresses had tense relationships with their daughters, something that brought out the surprisingly sympathetic side of Betty. Despite their lifelong disputes, Betty came to Joan's defence after her daughter Christina published her scandalous account of growing up with the actress, Mommy Dearest, in 1978, shortly after Joan's death. Several of Joan's old friends rushed to support the late actress in light of the details spilled in the memoir, but no one expected to hear Betty chiming in saying, "I was not Miss Crawford's biggest fan, but wisecracks to the contrary, I did and still do respect her talent. What she did not deserve was that detestable book written by her daughter." Shortly before her own death in 1989, Betty's own daughter, B.D. Hyman, published a similar memoir titled My Mother's Keeper. Betty received sympathetic feedback from fans and friends alike, and addressed her confusion at the accusations through her own book, This and That. "If my memory serves me right, I've been your keeper all these many years. I am continuing to do so, as my name has made your book about me a success." If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new here, and if you want to support my work, please visit my Patreon page. Now it is your turn. Who is your favourite in Hollywood's most famous catfight? Would you rather be on Bette Davis or Joan Crawford's side?